Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming down today to the induction. We do this every year. We usually do two sessions. I can remember the days we used to do 6 or 7 sessions over about 3 days, but the company's changed quite a bit over the last 5 or 6 years. It's probably a really good time to have the induction and to welcome you all here today to Trusthouse, being it's the end of the financial year. And by all accounts, we're looking like we're going to have a fantastic financial year last year, and it's looking really good for the future. Today, what we're going to talk about is the past, the present, and the future. Now, some of you have been to one of these inductions before, so I won't bore you too much. But really, Trusthouse is a community-owned organisation, and we have quite a rich history and where we've come from. But the first slide is really about how we're currently tracking, where our money comes from. So really, for sales, hospitality is still number one for us, with housing, hotel, and energy. And in terms of group profitability, hospitality, of course, with its gaming halls, is still a very important part of the business. For all we've pulled out of a lot of hospitality, non-performing hospitality outlets over the last 4 or 5 years. Hospitality is still a really important part of Trusthouse business, as is housing and hotel and energy. Everything's important that we've got within the company. In terms of Trusthouse Limited itself, this is, of course, without the foundation. Hospitality, in terms of the sales that we generate for the organisation, is still a vital part. 44% of all sales comes to the hospitality outlets, and we're in one of the flagships here today. And with housing, hotel and energy. Interestingly, when you start to look at profits, the actual profitability that the outlets are delivering, you'll notice that hospitality only equates to about 3% of company profits. It's really expensive to run outlets, maintaining the assets, lots of staff, obviously. We have to obviously buy product to sell. Whereas you look at housing attributes about 85% of all the profitability of the outlet. So whilst it's not the dominant in terms of sales, in terms of profitability, housing is very important to the organisation. Looking at the past, we've been around since 1947. We're over 70 years old. This is a bit of a timeline of the organisation. When some of the other entities, Rimatuka and Flaxmere, come into the organisation. Looking around, a big change in Trusthouse was 1995. Some of the older people, my age and older, will remember 1995 when Trusthouse actually gave up its monopoly. Back in the early 90s, 47 to 1994, 95, you could not buy alcohol from anywhere else except a Trusthouse outlet. You couldn't go to Countdown, you couldn't go to New World or Pack and Save and buy wine and beer. Everything had to be bought through Trusthouse. And almost overnight, we lost the monopoly, and therefore we're now into this competitive model that we're in. And that caused a lot of issues for Trusthouse, especially over the last 10 years and beyond, when things like smoke-free, social change and people's actions towards alcohol and gambling and such. So we've had to re-engineer and redefine our business model so we could become strong again. One way I like to think about Trusthouse over the last 5-10 years is we're like a mad rosebush that was just getting right out of control, and we had to start snipping away at this rosebush so we could kind of prune it back and so we could grow back stronger. And we'll report this financial year just gone a trading profit of well over $1 million, and we haven't done that for many years, and that's down to you guys, and I thank you for the work and the effort that you put into the organisation. We are a strong community-owned organisation now, and it's been really hard for everyone over the last few years, but we're on really good footing for the next few years and well beyond. We obviously got into housing, became a big part of Trusthouse. A very big part of Trusthouse. We were the first fully registered community housing provider in New Zealand in 2014, and that means that tenants who qualify can actually gain income-related rent subsidy, something that's only been available to tenants of Housing New Zealand houses. It's not easy to get. We went through a pretty strict contractual process. We won the contract to become a community housing provider, and it's something that we're audited every single year to make sure that the organisation is abiding by its benchmarks so that we can deliver a good service to our tenants. You'll also note 2018, we're really proud that we did the first housing regeneration programme. There's a lot of need, and especially in this community in Masterton, for houses. And it was Craig, actually, Craig Thompson, our general manager of housing, took me for a drive and said, we've got this house and it's in a huge section. And we've got lots of houses on huge sections. 1951, I think the house had been there since. And, he said to me, why don't we knock it over? And we could probably build 6 or 7, 8 houses on this one section. And we did that. And Craig, I know, is going to talk to you a little bit about that later on. But this is some of the innovation that we intend to do for the future, working with government to get subsidies to build new houses on our land and new houses that are fit for purpose for the organisation. The present, you'll see some people that you know on here. Some of you, I think, are in this room now. The core purpose. So, the core purpose of an organisation, what's your reason for being? Why are you here? What's your purpose? Every organisation has a purpose. Ours is to enhance the well-being of our communities. And we do that by operating successful businesses that benefit from community ownership and by distributing profits in support of community organisations and events. We're not for profit. We make profit, but the profit that we make goes back into either to manage our resources, our assets, or to be distributed back into the community to enhance community well-being. And we spend quite a lot of time, we do, management do, you're working in the outlets, and trustees deciding on where the money should best be spent to enhance community well-being. So, what we do, we don't give dividends to shareholders. We don't have any fat cats, as they say, in terms of shareholders receiving money. All the surplus profits that we make through this whole group of the organisation goes back for the benefit of the community. And again, it's something I'm really mindful of and proud of that we do every day. We make a lot of decisions at Trust House, and so, as senior managers and managers, we look at the values of the organisation, innovation, collaboration, commitment, respect, humility. They're really important to me, and I know to the senior team. And it's something when we are making decisions that we hold really dear to us. We want to be really innovative in what we do. Some of the things that are going to come up in the future, we believe are quite innovative, looking at different systems and processes. We like to think differently. How can we do things differently? We're in very much, I suppose, old segments of, hotels, affordable, public housing, bars, but we can always do things better and more innovatively, and that's what we seek to do. A vision kind of lines up with a core purpose. So, a vision is probably, something you can look at every kind of 3, 4, 5 years, but ours is to make a positive difference to our communities. That's quite funny, actually, when you think, Trust House, we're a bit of a paradox company. I go to a lot of meetings in Wellington, and people say, what do you do? I say, I do public housing, and I do gambling, gaming machines, and liquor. So it's kind of like this kind of balance in between in what we do. But we talk about this vision, and then they ask me, what's your vision? Or to create a positive difference to the communities. And I said, well, how do you do that? You're into gaming machines and liquor and gambling, and so how's that positive for the community? Good question. To me, the answer really is that we do things, in my opinion, and the senior managers, to best practice and above. We never advocate to sell to intoxication. We look at harm minimisation. With all the money and resources we've got, we try to make the houses and the properties that we've got as best as we possibly can for the people who live in them. And that's something that we all hold dear. So what we do with I suppose you call them at-risk products, what we do is we try to manage them as effectively and as ethically as we possibly can. I don't want to bore everyone, but we have strategic pillars. So this is like a framework. So these are 5 bullet points that the senior managers and the board kind of signed up to. We've had these for 2 or 3 years, and You'll find this on our website. I think we've got some handouts today for everyone to take away that really shows the whole framework that you'll see at the end. But sustainable profitability, regulatory compliance, community wellbeing, brand equity, and systems and processes. That sits at the top of a framework. Underneath, you've got strategic objectives and actions. And I won't bore you to death, but you can read those various points, and you'll see in many ways why myself, senior managers and outlet managers make a lot of the decisions that we do, because a lot of it's based on the strategic framework and also strategic objectives that we intend to achieve. Structure of the company. Again, I won't bore you too much. A lot of you know how this works, but you have Trust House Limited, which is the company that I am chief executive of. We have major shareholders, Masterton Community Trust, 94%, then Flaxmere Licensing Trust and Flaxmere Licensing Charitable Trust. They have 6% shareholding, so they are, for all intents, well, they are our shareholders. They appoint the directors to the Trust House board. Trust House board's made up of 4 elected representatives from the Masterton Community Trust and up to 3 independent directors. So we can have up to a maximum of 7. Currently we've got 5. The board, or the chair, appoint me as chief executive, and in turn I look after the businesses and staff through senior managers and through outlet managers and you guys as staff. On the other side, we have Trust House Foundation. They own and operate the gaming assets, the gaming halls. They obviously pay rent to Trust House for the rooms that they're in. But for all intents and purposes, they own the Class 4 gaming license and gaming machines and such. And they have Trust House Foundation trustees. They are made up of a selection of trustees from the various regional net proceeds committees. We have regional net proceeds committees in Masterton, Porirua, Rimutaka and Flaxmere. They decide where the grants, well, they make recommendations for the grants, and Trust House Foundation approve the grants. The board, this is just a bit of a setup here. The board, chief executive, and then again, I'm going to introduce you in a minute to the various senior managers that we've got. This is basically a very shortened version of organisational setup, structure. Sorry, governance. So these are the important people who look after the governance of the organisation. Probably Jock Kershaw, well, probably he is the important person. He's the person that appoints people like me, or me. Jock Kershaw is our chair of the company. Lucy Griffiths, Don Baskerville, David Henry and Mina Antonia are the Trust House directors. And then trustees, or the elected trustees of the Masterton Community Trust. Again, Jock, Lucy, Mina, Carl, Kieran and Brent Goodwin. Our people. So, senior managers, Thunderbirds. I actually didn't see this till this morning, but anyway, there you go. So the senior managers, see there's a handsome fellow there. I look a bit thin there, to be fair, actually, when I've seen that. But so I'm the chief executive of Trust House, so I'm really charged with developing, in conjunction with the senior managers, the strategic development or strategic policy of the board, organisational strategy for the approval of the board. And I have direct reports of the various senior managers. I'm basically charged with making sure that we implement strategy and that the company is successful. And if it's not, then I won't be standing up here next year. That's really how it works. So really, I suppose the buck stops with me in terms of the overall performance of the organisation. Richard Simmons, who many of you know, he's General Manager of Corporate Services. And again, I'm not going to get into too much detail. It says it all up there. I'm picking everyone can read. And a real integral part of the organisation in terms of finance, IT, a huge part within the organisation. Leslie Wright, she looks after me, and that's Leslie there, me and the rest of the senior managers, provides a lot of the executive administrative support, looks after all the board meetings and project management of the organisation. The lovely Cindy, General Manager of Operations and Compliance, and Cindy's responsible for all aspects of managing Trust House operations and also its foundation. So she's the go-to person for everything. I suppose that when you think about it, when I'm thinking about it, Cindy's really responsible for everything, kind of in terms of commercial operations outside of the office, and Richard's responsible for everything to a great degree inside of the organisation. That's kind of how I see things. And then we have Mr. Thompson, my fellow Scotsman, no relation. General Manager of Housing and Infrastructure, a massive role this is. You know, we've got close to 500 houses. And we have a significant piece of real estate right through the Wairarapa and of course up to Donnybrook as well. Craig also looks after all the infrastructure, which is, you know, all the other commercial buildings, making sure they are to building code and any other issues that we have. You know, Craig has the responsibility for overseeing that function. And that's it from me. I'll be back later, but I'm going to hand over to Cindy, who's our General Manager of Operations and Compliance. Thanks.
Just put Alan's stuff down there. Okay, so we have 8 multi-venue outlets, which include bars, bottle stores, restaurants, cafes, accommodation. Some of them there, all of them there. The outlets are supported by these managers, so 1 or 2 are in the house. They can stand up if they want. Jill, you were supposed to sit in the front seat. And I don't think there's anyone else there. So here's some photos of them. We've got Jeff, he's a temporary manager at the moment at the Post Office Hotel. Leanne Dean, she manages the Ledge. The Ledge is in Pororua. Hayley Miller, Pokimanu, which is, of course, in Martinborough. Jill Harris, which is Copthorne Solway Park. Jane from Farriers. Kerry does both Jackson Street and Kirapuni. And Raywin is in charge of the Flax and Flaxmere. Leanne is in charge of making us look good. So it's all your posters, your social media, websites, menu designs. She looks after that side of our business. And some of Leanne's work. So a lot of this is on Facebook, and you'll be able to go onto some of our pages and see this stuff. Bruce looks after auditing of all our outlets and making sure we are compliant. So we've got a lot of rules around health and safety, food control plans, stock assessments. So he helps with making sure that we're compliant. He goes to the outlets and once a month just does a check. We also have 4 non-trust outlets. But we do manage the gaming in these outlets. So these outlets don't belong to us. They are owned by individuals, but they allow us to have our gaming machines in there. So Trust House Foundation is responsible for grants back to the community. Every year we give just under $4 million. It's $4.3 million roughly with sponsorship. So over the last 20 years, we've given over $43 million back to the communities that we trade in. So we have 6 elected members from each area, being Wairarapa, Rumitaka, Flaxmere and Pororua. And these people recommend the grants to the foundation. And this is the foundation. They make the decision on where all the money goes for the gaming money. That's Class 4 gaming money. This is the split from last year. So, for example, health is a place like Hospice Wairarapa. Arts is like King Street. Arts, recreation and sport. We've given a lot of money to the new netball courts recently. Education is Yeti. And community is Balloon Festival, Wings Over Wairarapa, that we give funds back to. And the lovely Jane, she processes all these grant applications to make sure we're compliant. So there's a lot of rules around Class 4 gaming, what we can give money to and what we can't give money to. She goes through the applicants and makes sure that they're all compliant with the law. And this is some of the projects that we have been involved in over the last year, where the money's gone. Leave it to you, and Craig will take over from me.
Good afternoon. My name's Craig Thompson. I'm the GM Housing and Infrastructure, for those that don't know me. Housing, that block of units you see there is what Alan was talking about earlier on. We had a 3-bedroom 1950s house with something that's probably bigger than a cricket pitch at the back. And so the idea came up. We went through couple of architects, looked at different plans, and what we have there is 6 1-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units on a section that held 1 3-bedroom house. We're lucky in the way that this plan was in terms of the setup of the whole section, that we could do it this way. We do have other plans. I've not got them there, but that just depends on the money that we can get to build some more houses. So just a little bit about housing. These were purchased from Housing New Zealand in 1999 and have been in use for Trust House since then. We currently have 485 houses or units under our control or that we own and operate. Those units at Kiripuni we actually lease to another community housing provider, and they provide separate transitional housing, so there's somebody on site that helps them because the tenants that they have got additional needs that need to be better supported. We've currently got 5 members of staff. Our newest member of staff started last Monday, and she's here, Donna, wherever you are. I did see you earlier on. Donna's up the back. Donna currently works out of Te Awhina House. She works for Te Awhina part-time and Trust House the remainder of the time. So she's not in that picture. That's a happy band of Nadine, Ray with a grumpy face on, although that's fairly normal for Ray, Karen and myself. He's trying to hide his face now by growing a beard as well. So as Alan said, we registered as a community housing provider in 2014, and that gives us the opportunity to take income-related rent tenants. We also have, I'll use the word normal tenants, tenants that pay market price, and that market price is classed as lower than the lower quartile. So on average, all of our houses are lower than the houses that you would rent in Masterton. So that contract is with MSD, or Working Income, as most people know it, or WINS, although they don't like you calling it WINS anymore. And part of that registration was the fact that we can refer our tenants onto other wraparound services should they need it. One of the biggest issues is rental debt. Probably about 70 or 80% of our tenants are on some sort of benefit, and we know that benefits don't pay a lot of money. We appreciate that. That's one of the reasons the rents are so low. But even then, they still get into some rental debt, and so we refer on to the Free Budget Advice Service or to Connecting Communities for their financial management services. So we've got 485 houses, as I said. The majority of them are in Masterton, 363. And probably the biggest area of that is within the Cameron area on the east side of town. But we do have them spread out over the whole of Masterton. The whole portfolio goes from Martinborough, where we have 3, I think, left down there. Some Featherstone, Greytown, a couple in Carterton, Masterton, 2 in Eketahuna, and about 6 in Woodville. So at the moment, or at the time of writing this, there was 23 of those tenants on income-related rent. So there's now 25 as of today. So it's not a huge part of the housing is income-related rent. We would like to get more. It means the tenants pay a quarter of their assessable income. Generally, they're on benefits. And so a single person's income is about, on benefit, is about $215, $220, and they'll pay about $50 or $60 in rent. and then that means there's more left over to feed the family or to make sure there's electricity's paid and everything else. Since we purchased the houses, we've spent over $20 million on improvements. Now, those improvements include driveways into the houses. We've been insulating top and bottom. That's the ceiling and underfloor. Now, we have to do that by the 1st of July next year, but we're quite well down the track of that before the regulations came in. And we put heat pumps into a number of houses. We've got 20 houses that still have open fires, and we are working through getting heat pumps into them. Although just today, and it's happened a couple of times in the past, we offered a heat pump to a tenant and they don't want a heat pump because it's too expensive. They get free firewood. But the board has said that they're looking to replace open fires with heat pumps. The open fires, of course, are not particularly warming. They warm about 6 inches in front of the fire, and that's about it. Most of the heat goes up the chimney. But we are working on getting rid of those open fires. This year, as Alan said, we're going to spend more than $700,000 on improvements. One of the things that I'm working on at the moment is making sure that our existing tenants actually are probably better cared for than they have been in the past. And it's for me to hold my hand up and say, we have to make sure that when we rent a house, it's in a condition that is lawfully able to be rented. There's no holes in the walls, there's hot and cold running water, the toilet works, etc., etc., etc. The legislation doesn't talk about renting a house with good decoration. And we've had some long-term tenants. I mean, our longest term tenant is 60 years. We have some long-term tenants who haven't had too much done to the house over the years. Part of that is because they're very good tenants and take care of the house. And we've got to make sure that when we rent a new house, it's in a good condition. So we are spending a lot of our money repairing damage, etc., from previous tenants that we get back, if we're lucky, at $5 a week. That's if we get found in favour of. So we're actually going to be putting some more money aside this year. Part of that $700,000 is going to go to existing tenants to start looking at making those properties and their lives better in those houses. It's something that is a very, very difficult balancing act to make sure that the houses, as I said, are good to rent, but we have to take care of their existing tenants as well. Just a little bit more on the Cowra Row. It's a hydroelectric scheme. It was built in 1923, so it's slightly older than me, slightly older than most people in this room, maybe not Alan. So it's coming up 100 years old in it's 95 years old, so it's doing quite well. It was built for the local electricity board, and it provided electricity for the houses around that area, around Gladstone, initially. It was taken over by Genesis in 1999, and then 2011 it came back into Trust House, the Trust House Group. It generates 3.3 kilovolts and about 3 megawatts a year. It's not huge. It's a pimple on Genesis or a pimple on the stuff that Contact or any of these big generation companies produce. But it does provide power for about 250 houses, putting it in simple terms, because that's the only way I can look at it. At the moment, we sell the electricity into the national grid. We have looked at trying to do it for just Trust House properties or for our rental properties or just Solway Park, but we can't work it out. It won't work that way, and we've tried many ways of doing it to try and bring our power bills down. But we have to sell it into the national grid. Since we bought the property, it's cost us over $1 million at least, and that's upgrading most of the electrics in ongoing maintenance. At the moment, we've got a leak in one of the pipes, so part of it's not working. And so it's just a matter of keeping the thing up to speed and keeping it up going. It consists, for those that are interested, of 2 lakes. There's a Cowrarow Lake that some of you might be aware at the top of Tifari Hill. That comes down through the pipes into a lower lake through a generator and then back down to the bottom of Gladstone, and it generates down there. And then it goes back into the Cowrarow stream. So the water we use at the top gets put back into the stream at the bottom. And that's it from me. I'll move on to Richard to tell you about our support office team.
Thanks, Greg. So I'm Richard Simmons. I'm the General Manager of Corporate Services. So by trade, I'm a chartered accountant, but over the years I've inherited looking after finance, IT, human resources, payroll, health and safety. And I also am probably the key contact and liaison between us and our bankers, our insurers and our auditors. I wouldn't have a hope of getting that stuff done without my fantastic team in support office. First up is Cherie Williams, who's my financial and systems accountant, and Cherie does our monthly accounts. She writes my board report for me. All I do is check it. And does our cash flow forecasting and is administrator of all of our finance-related systems, so our accounting systems, document management systems, and various reporting systems we have. Cherie looks after those, upgrades those, and maintains them. The newest member of my team, Lewis Garnett, who's doing accounts payable, and he chugs his way through around about 3,000 invoices a month, making around 350 payments per month. And in terms of stuff that relates directly to the outlets, he also does your petty cash reimbursements, if you're looking for the person responsible for that. And we have Tanya Cantwell, accounts assistant. So Tanya's primarily focused on sales and wages reporting, and does a lot of our bank-related stuff, so bank reconciliations and checking all the revenue summaries that the managers provide to us, making sure that they're correct. And she also does the Trust House Foundation, which is the gaming side, does their monthly accounts as well. I've got Michelle Hopkins, who was formerly the manager of Featherston SuperValue and that entire complex down there. So Michelle's responsible for the payroll, doing weekly pays to all staff, and coordination on the food control plans, does a bit of HR administration on my behalf, and also creates the new contracts. So any managers or people looking for new staff, it's Michelle that's preparing your contract. And on the accounts receivable side, she also maintains that and moves all the information that comes from the BPOS point of sale into our accounting system and gets the statements out to suppliers. We've got Deanna Clement, who is a master of all trades. She's our receptionist, telephonist. She does an enormous amount of work on BPOS, your point of sale system, and does some design work with Leanne as well, so some of your point of sale posters and things. And she is also the backup for payroll. So I was just going to give you a little brief overview of some numbers, only a few, in relation to the Trust House Group, just so you have a feel for how big we are. So group sales, and that's the foundation, the gaming piece, plus Trust House Limited, the trading side, together, just over $35 million in the prior year. Our cost of sales of the goods we sold was $12.4 million, payroll of $7.5 million, and overall we made a group profit of about $6 million in the prior year. So they're all fairly chunky numbers. Our total assets of the group was $85 million. And as Alan's indicated, we're a community-owned organisation, and the number at the bottom there, the $60 million, is the amount of money that the community is essentially entrusted to us to run and run effectively. So if we sold up everything that Trust House owned, paid the bank off the 20 odd million we owe them, there should be about 60 million bucks left to give back to the community. Now, it's right and proper that the community want a dividend from that, and the way they get it back from us is through the grants and sponsorship. That's where the money's going. Just briefly on training, we did a bit more on this last time, but just to update you, I guess Cindy and I are really working with Business New Zealand to develop some appropriate programs. We're aware that the vast majority of our training is done on compliance because of the type of industry we're in. But we're also very aware that the only reason that a customer comes to your outlet as opposed to somebody else's is because of the people there. They don't come because the beer's any different or any colder or any warmer, it's the people. And so there's a lot of thought going into how best we help the customer make that choice to come to us. We're going to talk a bit about compliance because it's a hugely important part of our business. Cindy is the group manager of compliance, but for some reason I'm doing this bit. So when you look at the products and the services we sell, a lot of them are age restricted, and the reason they're age restricted is because of the potential for harm or abuse. So we have alcohol, we have gaming, we have TAB, we have cigarettes. We sell food where there's a potential to poison people. We have accommodation both in the hotel and in the housing where, if they're not properly maintained and insulated, there's a potential for them to be mouldy, cold and not safe. So there's a lot of risk, I suppose, associated with our businesses. So in that context, what the government does is they come back with a whole heap of legislation on how we have to do stuff. And these are by no means the whole list, but we've got the Sale and Supply of Liquor Act, the Gambling Act, the Racing Act, Smoke-Free Environments, Food Act, Residential Tenancies Act, and it goes on, Companies Act, Financial Reporting Act. All of these acts we have to comply with. So there's an enormous amount of requirements under each of those acts, and keeping on top of them all is fairly difficult. So how does Trust House approach that? Well, this diagram gives you a bit of a look. On the left-hand side, we have Audit New Zealand. That is the government's auditor. And because we're community-owned, the government looks at us and says, well, that's basically public money. And so Audit New Zealand also audit us. So in terms of the accounts that I produce with my team, Audit New Zealand is spending 3 weeks starting in a week and a bit's time checking those and making sure they're correct. So Audit New Zealand will impose some requirements on the Trust House Limited Board, and the Trust House Limited Board, they will set a strategy. Okay. The Audit and Risk Committee that we have is a subset of the board, and its directors that have very specific skills in insurance or legal or finance. And those people, with myself and Alan, we monitor the risks that we've got, and that committee sets policy or recommends policy to the board. So we'll look at things like how much should we borrow, how much of it should be fixed, what health and safety procedures should we have in place. All that sort of stuff comes under that Audit and Risk Committee because they're risks that we face. So it then comes down to the senior management team. Our job is to implement the policy. So that's why you get directives coming down. You will do this. It's not because we're trying to be a pain in the ass. It's because, unfortunately, there's legislation or a financial requirement coming from the board that we have to do these things. And then you come down from there, and it's down to the outlets to execute the policy. And that's kind of how the framework is. So I just wanted to focus on 3 policies, same ones we talked about last time. Under 30s, everyone hopefully knows what that is. If someone looks under 30, we ask them for ID. Food control plans, which I'll come on to shortly. And health and safety at work, which whilst not quite new anymore, is still incredibly important. So the under 30s policy, very simple. If they're under 30, if they look under 30 to you, you have to ask for ID. no ID, no service. It's pretty black and white. I don't think it's as much an issue as it ever used to be. The kids these days growing up, they know they need ID or they don't get served. It's pretty straightforward. If you get caught selling to an under 18, you personally, you'll get a fine of up to $2,000, not from us, that comes from the licensing agents. Disciplinary action from us, probable dismissal on your part. The duty manager on duty at the time can get fined up to $10,000. And repeat offending in a particular outlet can lead to closure for 6 weeks or in the very bad cases, permanent. So you imagine that. If they said, okay, Solway Park can't sell liquor anymore, what use would the hotel be? So this stuff's deadly serious. Food control plan. And again, the chefs in the room will all know this stuff. It's not rocket science. It's all about documentation, that we can prove that we've temperature checked the food, the fridge, that we've dated the food correctly, that it's got the right stickers on it, that the cleaning records are complete. It's all paperwork, but it has to be done to prove that we're running a safe operation, and that if someone, God forbid, did get poisoned, that we've done everything practically we could to avoid it happening. Health and safety. Yeah, I didn't see that until this morning. I had a question, and for those of you who've been before, don't answer. To the newbies in the room, who is responsible for the health and safety at Trust House? Yeah, the correct answer is everybody. And this new act that was introduced in 2016 now was a response to Pike River, really, where 29 people died. They probably didn't need to if the place had been run properly. And it's designed to change that culture from she'll be right to actually thinking proactively, is this safe? It massively increased the fines and the penalties, particularly for a person in control of a business unit, which in our case is probably Alan, but could also be me. And it introduced a thing called a primary duty of care, or made it very clear what that was. And the primary duty of care, and I know there's a lot of words up there, but basically what it means is we must, as far as we practically can, make sure that when you're working here, that you're safe, that anybody who's working here under your direction, like a contractor or an external party, is safe, and that anybody who is on site as a guest is safe, as far as we practically can. And that's the primary duty of care. I did have a question around this one. What do you think our most common accidents actually are at Trust House? Any? Slipping? Yeah. I'll tell you, it was the slipping is one. Sprains, strains, usually from lifting kegs or heavy boxes of liquor, and cuts for our friends in the kitchens. That's the four main ones we have, which none of which thankfully are particularly serious usually. Now, you guys have obligations as workers under the Health and Safety Act, and those are, you must take reasonable care of your own health. You must take reasonable care that your acts or omissions do not put someone else in danger. So if you walk past a huge puddle on a lino floor and think, sod it, I'm not touching it, and the next person careens over, well, you've just caused them to have an accident they didn't need to have. So it's just not knowingly walking past stuff that you can see is dangerous and doing something with it. You must comply as far as you can with any reasonable instruction given by the person in control, which is essentially Alan or your boss, to make sure that you're safe or anyone else is safe. Right. A question for you. Can you, as staff, can you be fined under the Health and Safety Act? Alan can. I probably can. Can you? Can you go to jail? Right, the answer to both of those is yes. You can be fined up to $300,000 as a staff member. Alan and I can be fined up to $600,000. The company can be fined up to $3 million. Right? You can go to jail for 5 years, and so can I, and so can Alan. That's the maximum penalties under the law, right? So they're not messing around. Now, they won't send people to jail for little things, but if you recklessly and there's some wording on the next page. If you recklessly endanger someone else and expose them to a risk of death, serious injury, or serious illness, you can get those penalties. All right? So just be very clear, health and safety is deadly serious, and it's deadly serious for all of us. So don't walk past stuff. In our contracts, just so you're aware, it says failure to observe safety practices as outlined by the employer is serious misconduct. Failure to follow those will most likely result in your dismissal. So, what do? You should not endanger yourself or others. You have to make sure that any contractors on your site are signed in, so we know they're on site, and that they have in fact been inducted, which means they've been shown around, shown the hazards in the area they're going to be working. You have to report all accidents and near misses. So we're not just talking about where people actually get hurt, it's where they could have got hurt, but thank God they didn't. We need to know that stuff because we need to see if there's a pattern. If there's a particular thing that's happening, and it's happening all over the place, and one day someone's going to get badly hurt, but we don't know about the near misses, we can't do anything about them. You must report all hazards you become aware of immediately, and use all safety equipment provided. The number of back strains I hear when people are not wearing the back braces that have been provided to the outlets really annoys me. And the final one there, I think it says it all, if it can't be done safely, don't do it. It's not rocket science. So, what should you know? You should know what safety equipment's available in your outlet and how to use it. You should know, and if you don't, you need to ask your manager, how do you report an accident or a near miss? Where is your first aid kit? When do you need to contact support office? Immediately. Okay, now the answer to that one is if someone in your outlet is hurt in an accident enough that they need to be admitted to hospital, not seen and then released, but admitted, you must phone head office immediately, because we need to report it to WorkSafe within 24 hours. If we don't, we are in deep, deep shit. So if you're in doubt, phone me, phone Michelle, phone Alan. You should know who your first aiders are, your fire wardens. Now, in most cases, that's your duty managers, but you should check. And this last one, eliminate, isolate, minimise. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. That's what we are required to do when we find a hazard. So if we found that there were cables all over the floor here, and it was a trip hazard, the first thing we have to do as a company is trying to eliminate the hazard. So if we can run them around the walls so people can't trip over them, we must do it. All right? If we can't do that, we have to try and isolate it. So that might be we put a barrier around it so that people can't walk there. So some other examples for eliminating, there was one restaurant chain that was mentioned, and of course Alan and I were on. They got a lot of injuries doing vegetable prep. And so they actually went back to their suppliers and said, can you guys build a machine that actually does this prep for us, so that the stuff all comes exactly how we want it? And they did. I can't remember what chain it was, but they were obviously pretty huge. So they eliminated the risk. They just took it out and said, well, the vegetables are now coming, we don't need to cut, we've got it what we want. Okay, so that's eliminate. Isolate, they gave an example of joinery where they had a noisy router that does the nice frilly patterns on your cupboard doors. They're incredibly noisy. So to isolate that, they moved the router into a separate building so that only one person had to be exposed to it. And then minimise is around your protective equipment, your training, to say, okay, well, look, we can't get rid of this, we can't eliminate it, we can't isolate it, so now we're just going to have to try and protect people as best we can. So that might have been guards on various equipment, like a meat slicer or something, you need guards in there to make sure that people can't put their hands where they shouldn't go. So you should be having discussions with your managers, with your standard meetings. Health and safety should be on there, even if it's just has anybody got any health and safety concerns, it should be raised at every single meeting. Right, on all of that terribly depressing stuff, how are we actually going? Well, touch wood, in terms of health and safety, we've had no serious injury accidents for about the last 9 months. Lots of strains, lots of sprains, lots of cuts, but nothing that's required hospital admittance. In terms of controlled purchase operations of alcohol, we've had no fails, and I don't know if that's just because none have been run or we've just been very good. I'm hoping it's the latter. Gaming, we've had no harm minimisation fails. And on the food side, we've passed all council inspections. So I guess on that front, that's very satisfying for us, and it's a big thank you from us to you guys for keeping that nice clean record. So well done and keep up the good work. And I will now pass you back to Alan.
Right, nearly there. So I should just find my space. So looking into the future, so as an organisation, we've always going to be looking into the future. How are we going to adapt the resources that we've got for the betterment of the community, so we can perform the duties under our core purpose. So when you look at the future and the assets that Trust House have got and the different kind of markets that we're in, we see public housing and development as probably one of the key segment areas of the business within Trust House. So that really is about how can we increase the housing portfolio that we've got, and how can we utilise the I suppose I'd call it the intellectual property, or actually there's a wire here I could trip over, health and safety. The intellectual property of the organisation, which is all the stuff that we've learned with housing. How can we utilise that? So there's a couple of things. So we're looking at land that we've got where we can build some more houses, as Craig was saying. That's one way that we can increase our portfolio. We're also looking at entering into different management service contracts with other organisations or Papakanga housing for the future. And other community housing providers within the region, within different regions of New Zealand, so that we can actually start to grow the company. You'd probably call that organically from within, using the skills that we've got. I'm always looking for pubs and taverns with multiple revenue streams. I think it's important with Trust House, we're quite an expensive operating model. We centralise a lot of most of the work that we do, in terms of payroll, all the administration that we do, big senior management, fairly large senior management and office team. So with that, we have to make sure that when we enter into any other businesses, pub businesses, that they have enough revenue streams to actually pay their rent, as we like to call it. So these are pubs with food, beverage, gaming, TAB. That's what we talk about with multiple revenue streams, and that's the kind of businesses that we look at for the future. Always keen to look at hotels. Again, hotels are really expensive to operate. We're spending about $2.5 million on this hotel over the next 5 years, probably more when all said and done. This is obviously a fairly old hotel, built in the 70s, a lot of it, and it's just it's just money all the time, just putting money into the business so we can sustain it for the future. And also looking at the hydro centre in Kururau for renewable energy. It generates quite a bit of cash for us. There are some issues maybe in the years ahead in terms of how old Kururau is as a hydro. But again, a community organisation, with a renewable energy segment within its business, it's pretty good for the PR of the company. And again, it's a nice to rather than a need to have. I'm not going to read all of this, but I'll just talk to you through some of the risks. I report to the board, myself and other senior managers. I report to the board in terms of what our risks are. So we look at risks all the time. What risks do we see to the organisation and how we're going to mitigate them? I won't talk about the mitigation. You can read that for yourselves. But natural disasters are a big risk for us. If we had a major earthquake here and we lost all of our houses, then where do we put our tenants? So we've got to think about things like that for the future. How do we mitigate that? Same with our businesses. We have a lot of people, including myself, who work for the company. We have major issues with our assets. What do we do? Health and safety is a big risk, including staff mental well-being, which is a big thing in employment. And it's something I'm really aware of for the now and in the future, and also legislative compliance. Just what Richard was talking about before. I've been in the industry best part of 35 years, and when I ran my first pub, the only real thing you used to worry about was a punch-up on a Saturday night. We didn't have the same issues that you guys have got. We didn't have to worry about intoxication. All the compliance issues that we have to worry about now. People have to be many things that 20, 30 years ago just wasn't really much of an issue. But now there's high penalties and high fines, and if we fail, we end up spending tens of thousands of dollars, and it can really affect people's livelihoods and jobs. Gaming is a sunset. We don't think gaming is going to last forever. New Zealand's one of the only countries in the world where we don't have online platforms for gambling indoors, through your computer. You can use online platforms and get into places like bet365.com in the UK, which is really popular. In New Zealand, it's still illegal to have an online gaming platform within the country. And we don't believe that's probably going to be too far away. So, people might just not go into gaming halls. In the UK, you don't have gaming halls that you do in New Zealand. People want to play pokies, gaming machines, and they want to gamble, play roulette. You can do that on your computer at home within the country. And that may well be the future. I'd be pretty sad if it was. But again, we have to watch for that risk and see what are we going to do as an organisation to make sure that we can keep giving $4 million a year back to the community if gaming was to fall over. Debt, we've got probably just about $20 million worth of debt. And again, that's one of our aspirations this year, is to pay as much debt down as we possibly can. Every $1 million of debt that Trust House can pay down, it's worth $60,000 to the bottom line. Again, it's another aspiration for us. Cyber security. We'd spend quite a bit of time and money managing our IT processes. It's happened to me where some of my staff have received an email from me asking me to transfer $50,000 into some account. Everyone knows I'm Scottish and I would never ask anyone to do that. But at the end of the day, it's these attacks we see happening regularly, but with us now, asking Trust House to do money, people phishing to see what information they can get. We've got people's details, through our payroll systems, our tenants, price points, how much money we take as an organisation, where that money comes from. So we have to be very protective towards our cyber. And again, we do some training. We've done it at an office level and an outlet level, and you'll probably find some more of that coming through, especially to the people, to the staff that use computers. We do have other risks out with the top 5. Lifespan of the assets, especially housing. These houses that we've got on average are 57 years old. I don't want to be known as a chief executive that's left houses that are falling to bits, and where are these people going to stay in 100, 150 years? So we have to put plans in place now to make sure that the assets are strong for the future. Very expensive. Ongoing asset improvements of the outlets, $2.5 million we spent here. We will spend here over the next few years. We've just spent $400,000 at Flaxmere, $250,000 at Jackson Street. Every single outlet's received significant investment. And it's a 5 to 7 year cycle, and we've got to keep producing money so we can put it back into these assets to maintain jobs. Class 4 failures, we fail with gaming, we could lose a licence, and that would be a catastrophe for the community. We do have hugely increasing cost of doing business. Wages is one of them. Whether we like it or not. It's important. We have to make sure that we're paying fair wages so we can get good employees to come up for the organisation. But it's an increased cost, compliance costs, the money we spend on health and safety, managing intoxication, harm minimisation. It's all a lot more additional costs than we've been used to in the past. And again, it's just the increase of cost of doing business. Property fire. Again, we've got a lot of business on our books at Solway Park in terms of conferences and events. And if we have fire here, where do they go? How do we mitigate against that? And again, it's another risk. And present company excluded, attracting quality staff is a real issue for us, especially chefs. We have a real issue, and not just Trust House, but a lot of places in New Zealand and within the region. Tourism, I think, is now taken over from agriculture as the number one business segment in New Zealand, and we have a real issue attracting good quality chefs. And when we attract them, they leave. A lot of good quality chefs, they come here, they'll work for us for a year or two, then suddenly they'll get the bug and they'll go to London or Sydney and, make the big money or whatever, and they may come back in years ahead, and they may never come back at all. The other thing for you guys that I really like to, especially the ones that want careers, it's really important, talk to your managers if you want to be managers. We really struggle. I have a brilliant senior management team. I really do have a great senior management team. I've been through a few of them over the years, 50 cents. And I've got a really good group of outlet managers, and it's taken me years and years and years to get this really strong group that I've got. Under there, I'm not really seeing many people coming through, and one real aim for me and the seniors team is to start pulling people through the organisation so that we can bring our managers through. We don't want to bring new people into the company. We want to employ from within. So if it's an aspiration that you have to be an outlet manager or a senior manager, then for goodness sake, let us know, because we don't know. And maybe we can look at some training and some career path that will allow you to do that. But again, I do worry. That's one thing I do worry about, is where our managers are coming from in the future, because we're all getting old. I'll be an old, well, probably am an old duffer now, but a lot of them outlet managers are old. They're all getting on. It's not the easiest job in the world, managing pubs, and I do worry about where my people are coming from in the future. So this would be a good time for me to put that message out there. Focus for the year ahead. We've had a fantastic year. Best year, we're probably going to report the best year we probably have for probably since before I started in 2003, so 2003-4-ish. We're talking 15, 20 years ago since we've had the year that we've had. It's been a lot of pain to get there, I have to say, over the last few years. But so we need to build on that. So what we really need to do as an organisation is work hard, make sure our customers keep coming back. We're managing our margins and we're minimising operational expenses. A big aspiration of mine and Craig's and the housing team is we want to provide better outcomes for our tenants. Craig, he'll be talking a lot about sustainable tenancies. Gone are the days where we just want to kick people out because they might be in a bit of trouble with their rent or whatever. We actually want to work with people to sustain tenancies. When people get into trouble, maybe it's financial, social, family, whatever kind of trouble, we want to be understanding, and we want to work with other organisations like Link People or Pathways that can create pathways, if you like, for them so that they can seek help if they need it. Again, that's something that we really aspire to achieve at Trust House. We want to, believe it or not, one of our aspirations as a team is to make Trust House a really great place to work, and we do that, we do try to remunerate as fairly as we can within the resources that we've got, and we want to add value to employment. At the moment, one thing we are working on is a bit of a Trust House passport, so we're approaching a lot of different businesses and, other organisations that maybe we can get some discounts or passports for our staff. So there's added benefits. So you work for Trust House, you can get some added advantages just by being part of the Trust House team. And that goes, for local businesses, maybe national if we can. We want to build a strong performance culture. I think we're well on the way to doing that. Loyalty is a wonderful thing. I've been with the company 15 years this year, and that's great. But I would never like to think that because I've been here a long time, that's good enough. I think, I want to be able to perform and do my very best all the time. And we want to be able to try and create that culture within the organisation. And in doing so, we want to reward people that perform and go above and beyond for the company. So you'll probably see a bit in the near future, a bit more work done on the creation of a performance culture. We also want to streamline and standardise the systems and processes within the organisation. Some of the things we do at Trust House, we've done just because that's the way it's always been, and we've kind of ripped that apart as a senior management team, and we keep asking ourselves lots of why questions. Why do we do things this way? Why do we run our accounts this way, operate our bars this way, manage health and safety in this way, use timesheets, for example, in this way, because it's fairly old-fashioned and it's not efficient, and it's really not how we want to operate going forward. So that's kind of letting you into a bit of the work that we do as an organisation. And Jack Welch was a really famous chief executive from General Electric. And one of his famous quotes in real life strategy is actually, and it's very straightforward, you just pick a general direction and you implement like hell. And that's just what we do at Trust House now. We're into this, we believe we have a solid strategic plan, and we're just going for it. We're just trying to implement. We don't try and waste too much time on the day-to-day bullshit, as you say. We just try and focus on the big master plan, which is to enhance community wellbeing. This is the Trust House strategic framework that I was talking about some time ago, with the pillars: sustainable profitability, the compliance, community wellbeing, brand equity, and systems and processes. And you see the various objectives that we have here. One thing that we are looking at, and it's not something we're going to do tomorrow, but it is something that we want to do as an organisation, and again, because it makes us more efficient, is, we're one of the only companies left that I know that still pays weekly. And that is a pretty inefficient way to pay our people. So one thing that we want to do as an organisation is we want to move from weekly pay to fortnightly pay. It means instead of doing things 52 times in a year, we do things 26 times of the year. Now, again, what we're going to do is probably some contracts that we've got actually state when the remuneration period is. There'll be a form of consultation processes. If anyone has any issues with this, then can I please ask that you speak to your direct reports, and they can come back and speak to us. But it is something that we'd like to move to, is to pay our people fortnightly instead of weekly. On issuing of the new contracts, what we'd like to offer is an additional annual days leave for all staff on acceptance, excluding the senior managers, like myself and the other 3 senior managers, but they've already supported the implementation to change. So again, that's something probably we're looking at this point, probably June or July, but we'll put some more information. But the first stage is if anyone has an issue, please speak to your direct report, because we want to make this as a succinct or as a process as we possibly can as we go through this significant change. And that's it. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone's got on any subjects at all. Yes, please. Yeah. Good question. Yeah, we haven't really worked out the nitty-gritty yet. We don't think so. We don't think we are going to pay 2 weeks in advance, because it puts a bit of a risk on the company, especially if people leave within that 2 weeks. But again, what I'll probably do is come back with a paper. I think the idea of this meeting was just to let people know what was going on. But I have to say, instead of ducking for cover, I doubt it very much that we would pay 2 weeks in advance.
Would we have an opt-out option in this, or if it's implemented, we just have to roll with it?
I think I'd go through a consultation process, and I would make my mind up from there, determining in how many people were for or against it. Yeah. Any questions at all on the company, strategy, risks? Okay. Look, thank you very much, everyone, for attending the induction. I know it's sometimes a bit painful going through it, but what I really hope is you leave here and you're better informed and you know what we're trying to do at Trust House. But thanks again, everyone. And again, any questions, I'm always free to take calls or suggestions, Karen.
Alan, can I say something? I am here as the social club chair, and we're running a bit of a third